Was it the most groundbreaking thing that I've ever seen? No.
Guys, this town just goes on poetry slams together.
Fighting, sparring, falling in love, dragons, smut.
Let's talk about the May books I read. I feel like I often front load my reading a lot. Like I read a lot in the beginning of the month. So there's like 7 books in the first 7 days. Ooh, the first ones I read were audiobooks. So the first book I listened to was Nora Goes Off Script, which you've probably never heard of because I didn't hear of it either. I was scrolling through Libby looking for a short rom-com, a short rom-com. And it's about this woman who is a single mom. Her husband's kind of a deadbeat. She writes this movie, kind of about her relationship, like her marriage that fell apart. They have this set piece on her yard, so they're gonna do one day of filming at her house. The main actor is kind of like in a bad place. He wants to try out living as a normal person for a little bit. It's one of those premises where you're like, really? You're telling me that he stayed on this woman's porch overnight and then she decided to let him stay with her and her 2 young children for multiple weeks? But like, when you put that aside, and it really did it for me. Exactly what you think is gonna happen in this book happens. Actually, no, it doesn't. It starts off that way, and then it took kind of a turn that I was a little bit angry at, but then it really was just very sweet though. Like something about this guy dating a woman with kids, like it really did a lot of things. Then I just decided to be really sad, and I read Every Day the Walk Home Gets Longer and Longer, which is a novella by Fredrik Backman, who wrote A Man Called Ove, among other things. I knew that was a novella. I knew it had the theme of like memory loss and Alzheimer's. It was available on audio. It was an hour-long audiobook. And so it was one evening and I didn't have a podcast to listen to, and I was like, I'll just throw this on and go on a walk. It's about this old man losing his memory, and his relationship with his son and with his grandson is very much just like a retrospective about memory and loss. And part of it was from the perspective of the old man and part of it was from the perspective of the very young grandson. It's just a story about family and connection and loss. So yeah, that was depressing, but also very well done. So then I read I'm slowly making my way through Cassandra Clare's archive of stress. So I read the first book of The Infernal Devices. I had every intention of picking up the next 2, and then I was just mood reading kind of. So I'm gonna talk more about this series when I finish the 3. But I did like it more than the Mortal Instruments. Then I read The Bride Test, which is about this man who has no feelings. I struggled with this because I'm like, you are feeling things, you're just not naming it. Like, get over it. But yeah, so his mom is desperate to find him a wife, so he gets him a mail order bride from Vietnam. And she has a daughter, and so she's trying to marry someone in America so that she can have a new life for her daughter and her mom and her grandma. Her whole plan, she is so fun, is to seduce this guy. This book is so smutty. It is so smutty. There's a lot on the page stuff, but they're just thinking about it all of the time. But yeah, I thought it had really good commentary about immigration. Yeah, so I did enjoy it. I think I just went in with the wrong expectations. Also, it was way too smutty for my taste. Next up, I read the Slammed series by Colleen Hoover, which I did not know was a teacher-student romance. Oh man, these characters have so much trauma. It's about this high school girl whose dad just died, so she's moving with her younger brother and her mom to a new city, and she meets this guy next door, and she's like, oh my gosh, we're in love. 3 pages in, they're in love. I am not even kidding. I'm not even joking. And he has a little brother and his parents have both died. Oh my gosh, budding romance, we kissed, whatever. She goes to school the next day and he's her English teacher. To be fair, he is like straight out of college and she is a high school senior, right? So it's really not that bad of an age gap. It's like 4 years. It's like really not an age gap. It's just because he is her teacher, right? And so they're like, we can't be together because you're my teacher. And also there's a whole subplot about a poetry slam. Like that's where the slammed comes from. They go to a poetry slam every Thursday. This is just what the town does. This town just goes on poetry slams together. As you can imagine, that's used kind of as a plot device to like have confessions of love and like feel things. And there's also another tragedy that happens. Point of Retreat follows that. I did like the love, but it was so fast. It was literally within 10 pages. The question was never, do we love each other? The question was always, fight every possible obstacle that could possibly come your way. And I didn't hate it. It was fine. It wasn't great. And this book, this girl, why was this book written? Colleen, this felt like a cash grab. It was the entire series from the guy's point of view, which is crazy because the second book is from the guy's point of view. That's the Slam series. There you go. Welcome. Then I went on a plane and I read Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, which was my book of the month, and it was very good. This one I was like, yes, this is what I wanted. So it's about a doctor and her brother needs a kidney donor. I bet you can guess what happens. And then there's like a new mean doctor who's a pain in her ass. She likes him in all the wrong places, and then he writes her a letter. And I was like, good morning. He has a lot of anxiety, so he writes a letter instead of like talking to her. That's just like an easier way for him to cope, which I didn't realize people did this in books. I actually did this in like middle school and it did not go well. So from personal experience, don't actually write letters to people. No, but so he writes this sort of letter and it's really sweet. And then they start writing letters back and forth. Like there's also a little bit of fake dating involved. It's not a full fake dating book, but there is some fake dating in there. It had a really good representation of someone with anxiety. Doctor romance. It gave me a little bit of Grey's Anatomy, but without all of the dying, you know? So if you need like a doctor rom-com, a little bit of fake dating, kidney donating, love note giving, this is the one for you. I'm sure that's what you were looking for. So I read that on the plane there, and then on the plane back, I read, shockingly, another Colleen Hoover, and also Tarryn Fisher, and it is Never Never, which was a journey. Oh my Lord, I felt like I was on acid reading this book. You can ask my coworker who was sitting next to me on the plane. The amount of times I literally gasped. So imagine you're in school, right? And you're in class and you're looking at you're attending a class, but oh, wait a minute, you don't know who you are. You look around, you're like, who am I, where am I, what's happening, right? You know all the basic facts, like you know that you're in a school, you know what a school is, you know how to drive, you know all of this, but you don't know yourself or any of your personal memories or anything. So it's about this couple that this happens to. It's sort of a mystery because you're trying to figure out what the heck is happening, but it's also very clear that like they had some sort of fight, their families are fighting, like there's some sort of problem that they don't know about, like a very big incident that nobody's talking about but is very clearly like supposed to be affecting them. This one I did like a lot more than the Slam series. The premise was really interesting and it was more of a thriller. Like at one point I thought I was on drugs, but it is, primarily a romance. I thought it dived into some interesting topics. We were back on my Marissa Meyer BS and I read Gilded and Cursed, which is her most recent release. And I listened to my queen, Rebecca Soler. This woman needs an Academy Award. And more on that later. So it's a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. And it's in this world that it's very like hunting based. Like there's this wild hunt that every full moon, there's all these different full moons with all these different names, very complicated. And it's like Germanic. So the people's names are like Gertrude and Hans and Fritz and Nickel. Like, it's like very German. And I kind of was living for it, actually. And anyway, so it's very like villages. Shit. And Cyrilda, the main character, she was like cursed by a god as a child. So she has like weird eyes. I don't know. And she's like, her whole thing is she tells stories. And there's like all these gods, like all these German gods. It's a lot. And on the night of the hunt, like sometimes people go missing, like sometimes people get taken by the wild hunt. There's also this whole thing where like magic exists, but it's behind a veil. You can't access the magic or the people with the magic. There's also a lot of like ghosts and dead people. It's very like, you know? There were a lot of times where I was like, a lot of very visceral descriptions, and it's a little bit gory, and there's parts of it that are very haunted house. Like it was very ambitious and very dark. I did not expect things to happen that happened. But the way that it ties into Rumpelstiltskin is she is like out in the hunt randomly. The people are like, why are you out in the field in the middle of the night? Like, we're gonna take you. And then she's like, well, no, I'm actually just getting some straw because I am a gold spinner. Like, she like pulls this out of her ass. Like, does not spin gold. Hi, did you miss me? I'm also in a different location. Don't think too much about that. Anyway, so she pulls a story out of her ass where she's like, yeah, I'm in the forest because I'm spinning gold because I'm a gold spinner. Ooh, that sounds like something I want. I'm gonna have you come spin some gold. And so she's like in the dungeon, probably gonna die, right? This ghost named Gild is like, hey, I actually do that. I actually do spin gold, so I can do that for you for a price, you know. That's where the Rumpelstiltskinness comes from it. There's a lot that happens. It's Marissa Meyer. So there's romance, there's heartbreak, and a lot of really wild world building. So, and then I also listened to, shocking, I bet you can guess. If you're anywhere on the internet right now, I bet you can guess what I listened to. Say it with me, everybody. Fourth Wing, correct. I did buy into the hype. I did. Did I like it? Yes. Was it the most groundbreaking thing that I've ever seen? No. Do I even need to tell you what it's about? Fantasy. Battle world system. We just have wars all the time, and we have dragons, and magic comes from dragons, so you have to be like bonded to a dragon in order to have power, right? The power comes from the dragons, right? Girl who has actually pretty good chronic illness representation, born very brittle, very breakable. She breaks all of her bones all the time. She's just the best, kind of. Was supposed to be a librarian. Evil mom is like, no, you're gonna go to the army where 80% of the people who enlist in the army die before the war. Fighting, sparring, falling in love, dragons, smut. There was a point where I was like, are we just gonna follow every plot point of Divergent? Every single one? And it didn't, but the beginning did. You can't even lie to me. You can't even lie to me and tell me that it didn't. It gave me the feeling that I got when I was reading Divergent and Hunger Games, and I can't complain about that. And the whole ending, it really did do it for me. Am I like, I am in a book slump and I'm gonna die now that I don't have the next book? No. I am very excited for the next book, but this is what I'll say about it. I think that it is, like, people are like, this is the fantasy novel that's going to define our generation. I don't know if I'd say that. Writing one debut that is extremely strong is one thing. Writing a 5 to 7 book fantasy series that can maintain its integrity and its audience and do that well for 7 books is entirely another. Like, the amount of fantasy books that I have read where maybe book 1 or book 2 is extremely strong and the rest of the series just like, so we'll see. And again, I listened to it, and Rebecca Soler, who's the audiobook narrator for all of Marissa Meyer's stuff, she does a lot. She's very, very good. The audiobook for this, and it was very good. I promise that there are writing vlogs coming. I know those are my favorite thing to make, and I think that they're what you guys seem to like the most too. And I would like to make them because that means I'm writing. So I've got one coming up for next week. So stay tuned for that. And if you are new here and you want to check out some writing vlogs, that's really what my main kind of content is writing vlogs and also
I'm gonna call it like reading for writers, like reading books, but taking things from them that writers can use, right? I also put a beta reader interest form in pretty much the description of this or any of my more recent videos. It'll have a link if you are interested in beta reading for me, which is like crazy that someone would be interested in that. But if you are, I'm not looking right now, but I'm kind of looking to get contact information. So it's just a quick Google form telling me like what you read, what you write, if you have any experience, if there's certain tropes that you like or if you avoid them, you know, like that kind of thing. So I can kind of get some names because I'd love some more feedback. Stick around for more writing content. I'll always do a reading wrap up because it's kind of like a good time capsule to see like what am I reading? Like what the heck is happening? We're gonna stop there. Anyway, comment, like, all the things, all the YouTube things. Did I hit all the YouTube things? Turn on the notifications if you're feeling jazzy. Yes, I'll see you next week with a writing vlog, I promise!